name Alex Scott will be familiar to a lot of football fans. Most people have heard of him for a multitude of reasons. He's been tearing it up in the Championship this season, has performed admirably for England's junior age groups, and of course if you play Football Manager or FIFA or something like that, you probably signed this kid because of his enormous potential. But we're not dealing with virtual potential here, we're dealing with the actual real potential, and more important, ability now. At first glance, his stats are underwhelming, let's say that. I think he's got 1 goal, 5 assists, something like that this season. But you've only got to look at the lad play to see that he's fantastic ability on the ball, travelling with the ball, passing range. He's got decent athleticism, great balance, great poise on the ball. He's a really good player. At one point or another this season, almost everybody from Manchester City down to Leicester City have all been linked with this player. So there's going to be a lot of clubs battling it out. The reason this news is relevant today is that late yesterday afternoon, ex-West Ham United employee suggested that West Ham were in for Scott. We want the player. We are at advanced talks with his club, apparently, or with his representatives. A bid is expected imminently. Now, just forget it's Alex Scott's for a second. If you watched yesterday's video, I think this is a good move. I don't want to talk too much about Declan Rice and Arsenal because it was suspected they made a bid yesterday. Turns out they didn't make a bid, but they might be preparing to make a bid today. I'm just aware that if I do a video talking about Arsenal's interest in Declan Rice, it's going to get old very quick. So if that happens and there is any breaking news, we'll upload a video. Don't worry about that. But what I did say in yesterday's video was that I thought it was a poor negotiation strategy for us to say, oh, excuse me, we're skint. We can't spend any money until we sell Declan Rice. I thought it sent the bad message out to Arsenal. Or anyone else that wants to sign Declan Rice for that matter. If we actually go out and we buy, and we go and buy Alex Scott and we go and spend the 20-odd million, then I think that's very, very helpful. I think it goes a long way to us being able to puff our chests out and say, look, don't worry about it, we're carrying on with our business. But anyway, he's a very good player and I'm delighted that we've been linked with him. But I want to talk about 2 things with regard to Alex Scott. One of them's Lucas Paqueta and one of them's James Ward Prowse. As I say, I've known about Alex Scott for the majority of the season, as most of you will have done. There's something different between looking at this player because some of us will have seen him if you watch the highlights show on the Championship. He's featured prominently in that, which sort of helps that you don't have to go and start scouring through YouTube videos. But even if you were to do that, you've not got to worry about compilations put together to some dodgy dance music by a 13-year-old in his bedroom. Don't worry about that. You've actually got the proper footage from the EFL Championship. So you know you're watching bona fide footage if you want. It's authentic. If you go and have a look at that, it's hard not to be excited by the player. But by the same token, because he's so young, it also makes our pursuit of James Ward Prowse look a little stale and tired. Now, I know I've mentioned it before about the lack of scouting, the lack of initiative. We all like to unearth a sort of hidden gem, don't we? A little diamond in the rough, if you like. There's none of that with James Ward Prowse. You buy a player like that, you expect him to hit the ground running. But there's no romance in it. There's no fantasy in it. I want to go and sign the best young players who can come to West Ham and improve. In many respects, I would like us to sign Alex Scott for him to come here and do a Jared Bowen. That would be absolutely ideal. That is, I often will give examples of transfers that maybe haven't worked out. There is an example of a transfer that really has worked out. That is prime Moyes, that is. Getting someone from the Championship, bringing him in and making a success of him, and he's better. That's just the way he sort of does things. You know, he's got a good track record, and I'm not going to go through them all now, but even going back to Tim Cahill, who was an absolute revelation for Moyes at Everton. I think that's where he's most comfortable, but I also think that it ticks a lot of boxes in as much as whoever a new director of football is coming in, they're going to appreciate that signing. That's going to be a good signing. You can imagine anyone that's going to be taken over at West Ham with their approach and said, look, we're about to sign this player. Do you think we should sign him? And they'd say, yeah, okay, we'll tick that one off. I think that's a good one. I'll give my I'll rubber stamp that one. We'll do it, but less so with James Ward Prowse. Oh, I don't even think I've got to convince you guys about it. I'm sure the majority of you will agree with what I'm saying. So I like that very much, and I prefer that to happen. However, there was something else that I noticed when I was sort of watching some of his footage again earlier, and that was Lucas Paqueta. It would be a bold move indeed for David Moyes to pair these two players together. I mean, it really would. There's a lot of similarities. Okay, one's right-footed, one's left-footed, but they both like to travel a little bit with the ball. They both like to release an early pass. They're both happy to draw the foul. And whilst I would probably suggest latterly in the season Paqueta plays as a number 10, if you look at them positionally, particularly where Paqueta plays for Brazil and where he played at the start for us maybe, they do operate in sort of similar areas of the football pitch. So for that reason, I found it hard to believe that we would be signing this guy. I just looked at him and thought, no, I can't see that. Not that other teams wouldn't play them together. And maybe you could get them where they would complement each other, but they did seem very similar. But then I thought back to myself, well, what about this transition that Moyes tried and failed? This, as he called it, breaking it of West Ham. As David Moyes said, I've got to break West Ham. I need to break them. We're going to transition into something else. We're going to play a more... It is exciting brand of football, but I don't think he was doing it to be exciting. As thinking back to the interview, it was more a case of possibly some teams have found out our defensive strategy. He wanted to implement and introduce something else to West Ham's style of play. And he tried, and he failed, and he reverted back at the end. That's what happened. He basically reverted back to his default settings. That's what he did. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us it didn't work the first time, but it does tell us that maybe that's something he wanted to do. So what you've got to think is one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to think, well, you know what? Forget that. I tried that. It didn't work. It's back to old Moyesy, vintage Moyesy. You know, let's defend and let's try and hit him on the counter. And maybe he does that. And if he does that, I do find it hard to see that Paqueta and Alex Scott would be in the same team, irrespective of who you'd sign, because Alex Scott is not a replacement for Declan Rice. However, if he is going to go and do the thing that he tried to do and failed doing, which is basically create a new West Ham, a new open West Ham who play the ball around a bit more, that's such an oversimplification of it. Then maybe, just maybe, that is something that could happen. I really want to sign this kid, and I do realise I'm contradicting myself, because I've said on a number of occasions I try not to get too excited because until I know we're actually trying to sign somebody. So a lot of this stuff is just, you know, could be agents trying to feed people information to drum up interest in their player. And the reason I don't do it is I don't want to be... We may find out we were never in for Alex Scott, and then we don't get him. I don't want to get upset. What's the I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Lewis Potter. That was his name? I think that was his name, right? Played for Hull. Keane Lewis Potter. That's it. Played for Hull. We were rumoured to be interested in him. He was meant to be the next Jared Bowen. And it actually turns out that in the end, he signs for Brentford. Now, there was a lot of disappointment that we didn't sign Lewis Potter. But actually, as it transpired, we never bid for him. So that was very much an indicator in maybe the player's agents then leak the news, then the club leaks the news, not our club, and then the newspapers get hold of it and the websites get hold of it, and, you know, whatever, YouTube channels, and everyone gets hold of it, and it's being reported. West Ham are after Lewis Potter from Hull City. And it's a good story, you can understand that, because the Jared Bowen one makes it a good story. The next Jared Bowen, that's a great headline. And we were never actually in for him, and then a lot of people get invested in it, thinking, oh yeah, I want this guy. They go and look at the footage. This is the guy we need on the left-hand side. We don't get him, and Brentford pip us to the post. It's typical West Ham, you know, we miss out on a player. We were never in for him. And for that reason, I try not to get too invested, but sometimes you look at someone play, and think, I'd like to watch this person play at West Ham. And this is exactly what we should be doing. This is the type of player who... I don't think you can really lose with a player like this unless they were to get a really unfortunate, nasty career-ending injury. I don't think you can fail. If it's 22 million, and that's what the reported fee is, 22 million, then you go and buy this player for 22 million. I think you'll always get that back. He's not going to come in on 100 grand a week because he's coming from the Championship and he's coming from Bristol City. You'd probably find he'd come in on about 40 grand a week. The liability of the transfer is not massive. And even if he played for you for 3 years, it didn't work out. I'm still sure you're going to get 15 million for him and you haven't spent a load on wages. But if it does work out and he is good, you may well find you've got a 50 million plus player on your hands. And that's obviously a really, really good thing. And that's why you've got to go and buy this guy rather than James Ward Prowse. And I do find it hard to believe. I'm gonna say it now, and I do not know anything at all. I've heard nothing, no in the know stuff or anything like that. But I don't think we're going to sign James Ward Prowse, and here's my reasoning. It's a guess. I can't think for a second that having lost the amount of money we have on deals like Vlasic, and I'm not going to go into it all, that Sullivan has a great appetite for wasting more money on a 27, 28-year-old. Is Ward Prowse 28? I can't see that there's going to be any desire from any director of football to spend money on a 28-year-old player. The director of football is going to get a budget, right? He's going to get a budget. Let's say Moyes is allowed to spend some, and Moyes is allowed to pick one player, and the director of football can pick whatever, 2 or 3. I don't know how it works. I haven't got a bloody clue. But whatever happens, if we're going to spend £50 million on Ward Prowse, that's coming out of West Ham's transfer budget. If you're bringing a director of football, that's an investment. It's an investment in time and it's an investment in the future. But it requires an investment in money, cold hard cash. And if what you're doing and you are that guy that's being brought in, you're going to be saying, well, hold on a second, you're bringing me in to overhaul the recruitment setup, to bring players in and start turning you a profit or saving you money, then you're going to go and buy this 28-year-old player, as good as he might be at set pieces and whatnot. That's not going to enable me to do my job. I would expect a director of football to turn around and say, well, hold on a second. With that 50 million, I can go and get you 2 players for 25 who I've already scouted and know a lot about. One of them being a midfielder, one of them something else. That's what I would hope would happen. And maybe, just maybe, one of those is Alex Scott, which is why he's maybe given the rubber stamp. I'm thinking ahead. That might not have even happened, but I think if I was David Sullivan, I'm just about to employ a director of football, and somebody already who's at the club, be it David Moyes or Rob Newman, saying we want this Alex Scott, I think the guy I'm just about to bring in on a 5-year deal to start a recruitment overhaul at the club, I'd be turning around to him and saying, Moyes, he's just recommended this Alex Scott for me. Shall we get him? I think that would be the prudent and sensible thing to do. What I do think is, even if let's say it's Tim Steed, and let's say this is the guy, then he's going to have heard of him. He'll say, yes, actually, we all know about him. We know about him in the continent. We know about him at Germany. He's one of England's best upcoming players. So they're going to know about him. He's probably going to say, yeah, go and get him. I hope it's true. I hope it's true. Even more than that, if we accept that David Moyes is going to be here next season, I hope it's also true if David Moyes is thinking, I'm going to pair Alex Scott with Lucas Paqueta up top. If we did that, I think it'd be pretty exciting.